meeting to order. This is the regular Board of Trustees meeting. It is Tuesday, March 27th, and it is, let the record show, we began at 7:02. First order of business, I would ask the clerk if she will please call the roll.
President Klein.
Here.
Trustees O'Brien Berglund.
Here.
Ortner.
Here.
Stanifer.
Here.
Thomas.
Here.
Wecken is absent, and Zappa.
Here. Thank you. We have minutes from our March 6th meeting, and I would ask someone to make a motion so that we can then take a look at any suggested updates or changes or edits.
I'll move approval, George.
Thank you, Mark.
Second.
Thank you, Colleen. Any discussion on this set of minutes? All in favor of accepting the minutes as presented indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We had another special meeting on March 20th, and I would ask for a motion regarding those minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes from the special board meeting for March 20th, 2012.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any suggested edits, changes, corrections? If not, all in favor of accepting the meeting minutes as presented indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Item number 3 on our agenda is comments from the floor. This is an opportunity for residents to make the board aware of topics or issues or opportunities not on today's agenda. Is there anyone here who would like to comment? Seeing none, I will go to item number 4. And for this, I'm going to remove myself from behind my desk and go to the podium. And I will ask Mr. Thomas if he will join me up there for the recognition. A little levity here, too. Now, I think it's really neat, Jim. I know you have a lot of friends, and I know you just came back from Cancun. I know you have a lot of friends, your board members here and friends, and look at this. Look at those people.
The biggest turnout we've had in years.
Honoring you. I'm really impressed with that.
I'll pay you all later.
But not enough to cover the library costs. Okay. Just had to throw that in. It's interesting to me that when somebody leaves, it gives us an opportunity to go back and research, well, what did they do? And we got wondering, geez, did this guy do anything? How long was he even here? And I would like to read this because this is quite impressive. This is a certificate of appreciation, grateful recognition of Jim Thomas for 6 years. I didn't realize it was 6 years of committed service to the Village of North Hudson as a member of the Village Board of Trustees, the Finance Committee, the Public Safety Committee, Public Welfare Committee, Public Works Committee, Cable TV Board, and the Intergovernmental Advisory Council. Thank you very much for your service, Jim.
True pleasure. I like the car.
You like the car? You can thank Becky for that. We figured that would be very appropriate for you.
Hold it up.
Okay, here we are.
I think for the pictures you'd have one way back so you get the full height.
It's funny, I don't have the height lines behind me for the shoes.
There you go.
It's a great village. I've had a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it doesn't mean that, you're off the hook. You can still call me.
Oh, yeah.
As a matter of fact, we have a centennial coming up, and I'm going to need some help with that. All right. The next item on the agenda is library funding, and Neil Soltis will be giving us a presentation. Neil is the finance officer for the City of Hudson. He's been very gracious to agree to come and speak to the Board of Trustees tonight. This is a public meeting. It is not a town hall meeting, and it is not a hearing. The purpose of this presentation that you're about to see is to inform the board and the administrator of the financial impact of the library funding and alternatives. As such, I will only be entertaining questions and comments from the trustees and the administrator. On February 28th, a group of us were invited to attend a meeting of the Library Steering Committee. It was at that time, and during that meeting, that we learned that we, the Village of North Hudson, and the other contributing members of the joint library were not in compliance. Since that time, there have been three, by my count, there have been three, there might have been four, three meetings with Dan Gavin, Jeff Johnson, Alan Burchell, and myself, trying to update us on on our non-compliance. In 2002, we formed the joint library, and at that time we were in compliance, but we didn't know it. The word compliance didn't even come up. In fact, I've read through the contract, the 2008 edition of the contract. I've read it thoroughly multiple times, trying to even find the word compliance, and it's not in there. I think the word isn't in there is because we weren't aware of the statute that required compliance. And I know that Neil will be talking about that in just a few moments when I'm finished here. As I said, we were in compliance and didn't know it. We were in compliance when when we started because of the 70% regarding 70% funding from the formula from the county. As the county changed its formula, went to 85 and then to 100%, we were no longer in compliance but didn't know it. And so what you're going to see now is this presentation. Some of you are already quite familiar with what Neil will probably be talking about because it was on the front page of a recent Hudson Star Observer. And I'd like to thank Doug for an excellent article. A lot of detail in there. And now what you're going to see, using the packet that you have in front of you and the presentation that Neil's about to give us, you'll be able to follow along and see the numbers and see the alternatives. So Neil, thank you very much for coming, and the show is all yours.
Thank you very much. I'd like to say I did this just for you. However, I had to give pretty much the same presentation earlier this morning. However, I've added, I think, one thing since what you received in your packet, but I think it's a little bit helpful because as the president had mentioned, we've had these discussions. The chief elective officials of each municipality have had these discussions previously, and they understand the concepts in that. And so I think to start with, let's start at the beginning so you have a better feeling for how libraries are funded. There we go. This is, in summary, how the library is funded, and I think this would be, typical of virtually any library in the state. If you look at, if you look at these first four items here, these are the four communities that are members of the Hudson Area Library. The amounts that they contribute are pursuant to the joint library agreement, and those are distributed on a per capita basis. There is no minimum funding level for what you contribute. So, there's no requirement, where George had mentioned compliance. For local funding, there is no minimal requirements. And I think that's a real key in here. However, you'll see later on where there is some desirability to increase funding. So all the local levy, the amount of money is distributed by population. The local levy amount, that's what goes directly to the library for its use. The other source of funding, and I'm only looking at tax revenues here, the library does have some other revenues, is from the county library levy. And this is really probably what's at issue. Now, the money that the Hudson Library gets is based upon, it's pretty much a formula. There's a mandate in the state that you can't turn somebody away saying, this is our library, our 4 communities, nobody else can use it. There's a mandate in the state that the library is open for everybody's use. So the state has provided a mechanism for compensating those libraries for that use. And it's referred to as a number of terms. Probably the most recent is Act 150, because I think Act 150 is the last update to this that was done sometime in the late 1990s. This formula is based upon really usage of the library, where the first 4 items here are based upon our library, our joint library agreement. This number here is based upon the actual usage of the library from people outside of this jurisdiction. Also excluded from that calculation are usage from people who are served by another municipal library. So if somebody from, say, Somerset uses the Hudson Library, we're not reimbursed for their use because they're a tax-paying body themselves. Most of that circulation there actually comes from the town of Troy, and there's a simple formula. Linda, the library director, completes a report at the end of each year. It says, this is where all of our circulation for our library comes. They, based upon the cost of running the library, they come up with a statistic called cost per circulation, cost per circ. What they then do is look at how much of that circulation is to residents of communities that aren't served by libraries, and it's that number times the cost per circulation gives you what's called the Act 150. That's the amount that the county will reimburse the library for that circulation. Any questions on that? I mean, I think that's a real important thing to understand, because then this is local, what comes back here. So this is purely demand-driven and cost-driven. Now, when we're talking about the library levy, there's one other factor in here. I think George had mentioned before, 70%, 85%, 100%. Under state statute, the county must reimburse at least 70% of that cost. So we have, X number of books, being checked out, books, records, whatever. Here's our cost per circulation. You have a number there. Currently, the county is reimbursing us 100% of that cost. They're only required by state statute to reimburse 70% of that cost. And as George had said, that had gone up. It's incrementally gone up from 70 to 85 to the current 100%. So between the local levy, which is going direct, and the county levy, one other thing about the county levy now. The county levy, if you're on the county side of this, you have every library that's doing the same calculation. They're turning in their reports, circulation times cost of circulation. What they'll do now, the money that the Hudson Library is getting in 2012 is based upon historical circulation and cost per circulation for 2010. So there's about a 2-year lag. You get the numbers for 10, the county levies it in 11, you collect it in 12. It just it follows suit. So what the county then does is the county says, well, we owe the Hudson area library, and it's actually the amount from St. Croix County is about $75,000. We do get about $4,000 from other counties. It's a little under $4,000. You're including like Barron County, each county will submit to the other counties, so you do have some funds coming in that fashion too, because you have people who are living up there. They may work here, books on tape, any of a number of things. However, we're reimbursed for that circulation because we're providing that service. So what the county does is takes this information from all of the municipalities that have libraries and has its grand total amount of money that they need to basically levy. So somehow they need to collect that, based on what happened in 2010. It's reported in 11. And what they're going to do is they're going to pay those libraries for the cost of that circulation in 2012. And that's one of the, that's the one, key issue that's, that's been driving this whole discussion is the county library levy. Are we good? Questions? The other thing that in terms of funding the Hudson area library, that happens is you'll see, whoop, let me jump back here, wrong button. See this payment to other libraries. And as a part of the joint library agreement, well, I guess one of the, I don't know the history on it, but as a part of the joint library agreement, the Hudson Library almost has its own internal Act 150 in that we're reimbursing other libraries for their circulation. Because when this was formed, we're basically we probably took some circulation and reimbursement away from them. Therefore, in trying to be as equitable as possible, we're reimbursing them. So we're reimbursing River Falls, Roberts, and Somerset libraries. Now, the year that we're looking at is a bit of an anomaly, because when you think about that, this reflects what's happening in 2012. If you jump back to what happened in 2010, when the library had the shift, therefore you weren't able to serve your residents, they went to the other libraries. So typically where this number right now is showing 52,000, for purpose of the comparison, what I've done is try to recast 2012 with a number of options. But inherent in that is that you have this 52,000, which in a normal circumstance probably would be in the mid 30,000 range. So what you're looking at, what does the library have to operate on? Net revenues or tax revenues are the 656,000. There's additional money from fines, copies, et cetera, and they probably operate on a little bit over $700,000 to go forward. Where George had mentioned compliance, one of the things, I think this is in your folders, this is the last page. However, I felt it was important to talk about it right now and up front. This is actually a calculation that came from the county that really started this whole discussion. And this, and when we talk about this, it's important to look at, this is where getting the understanding of the Act 150 and the county library levy is important. There's a formula that's set by the state that says libraries need to provide or municipalities need to provide a certain amount of funding to their libraries in order to be exempt from the county library levy. And there's a formula for determining it. We can go through it, in a minute. So when they look at this formula, and it's something that is done on an annual basis because the numbers are always going to change. And it's based upon, typically the equalized value as opposed to assessed value, because equalized value pretty much trues up assessed value so that you're looking at apples and apples comparison between communities, or at least as close as possible, because on assessed value there's a fair amount of variation. I think everybody's aware that periodically you need to be sure that the assessed value and equalized value are within, 10% for at least 3 years, or else you have to go have it reassessed. So you're always trying to true up to that equalized value, so that's the basis. So if we look at the calculation here, one of the things that the county has to do, and I highlighted the Village of North Hudson as an example. The value of every property in the county is $7.5 billion. And that would be all the towns, all the villages, and all the cities combined, $7.5 billion. In looking at the computation of who should be exempt from the county library, if you look here, of the towns exempted out are the town of Hudson and the town of St. Joe, totaling $1.3 billion. The villages, because they all have libraries, are treated as exempt, and the cities are all exempt. So 4.9 billion or 4.6 billion is exempt. So the county is sitting there saying, the money that we need to collect to reimburse all the libraries, we're going to levy that over the remaining $2.8 billion. The amount of, when we talk about circ and cost per circulation from 2010, services basically provided to people who don't have libraries in their community, the cost of that within the county, and this would presumably reimburse other counties additionally is $941,000. So it's simple math that you look at. There's the county's mill rate, 0.0003349. The equalized value of the Village of North Hudson. So, what the formula would say is that for North Hudson residents to be exempt from the county library, they would have to fund their local library to the tune of $115,000. Currently, the funding is $82,000. Therefore, there's a deficit there. So technically, the city or the Village of North Hudson is not exempt from the county library levy. And I think you can see the numbers for all the other member communities. And I think it's important to note that, as George mentioned before, one of the things that happened, over time is that we've grown originally the reimbursement for the libraries was at 70%. So if you look, going back, 3-4 years, instead of $941,000, this number would have been $620,000, $625,000, somewhere in that range. So you could see, applying those numbers, and actually I think when you do apply these numbers, the Village of North Hudson would actually be in compliance and would qualify for exemption from the county levy. Questions? Before I go flying on. One of the things that, knowing that there is this issue to deal with, that, all of our communities on and beyond paying for our local levy for the library are going to be confronted with beginning this fall is, can we exempt our residents from the county library levy? And if so, what are the various options out there? And what we've outlined and have focused on are 4 basic options. And when you look at these 4 basic options, I kind of look at the 4 corners of a box that, these are almost the 4 extremes, and where we end up could be in the middle, because when we talk about somebody being exempt and not exempt, we may hit where, the Village of North Hudson is exempt where the others are not exempt. And so some of these numbers are going to shift a little bit, and so it's a tough target to pull down. But I think if you understand the concepts and, the options and how libraries are funded, it'll help, get a better discussion on the issue. So the options that have been thrown on the table are, number 1, continue as a joint library, or number 2, revert back to a municipal library. And that was, the reverting back to the municipal library was what was recommended by the Library Steering Committee. There are, potentially some benefits, some detriments, but I mean, that's going to be a judgment. Within each of these, the 2 sub-options that we'll explore are, number 1, no change to current funding, and number 2, what happens if there's no change to current funding, and then number 2, what happens if we increase the local funding so that the communities would be exempt from the county library levy. We have that as we continue as a joint library. We also, if we revert back to a municipal library, we're showing that really for all the other communities would pay the county library tax. However, it probably has a greater impact on the city of Hudson as to whether they are exempt or not exempt. There are a couple of other factors or issues that need to be brought into this discussion. It's not as easy as 4 choices. Number 1, I think we've talked. George mentioned it previously, and we talked about it a little before. What's the basis for the county's levy? If it was, the state statutes require a minimum of 70% reimbursement of costs. The county is currently reimbursing at 100% of cost. Probably issue number 2 is prior to this year, there was a concept called maintenance of effort that was in state statute, which basically said that a municipality could not reduce its level of funding for a library beyond the average of the last 3 years. That has been taken off, and I think this is the first year that has been taken off. One of the things is, that's something that is, just as it was taken off, can easily be put on, as any political decision can be made. And so that's one of the things to be, that we, needs to at least be up for discussion, is that if we somehow increase funding for the library, local funding, and maintenance of effort comes back on, you're locked into it. The next issue is changes to state statute. I don't know how many people here were aware there was an effort in the state legislature to change the state statutes with regard to the county library. And the gist of what was going through the legislature was that if a community really complied with maintenance of effort statutes, saying that we keep on funding the library as we have on an average of the past 3 years, that in and of itself would exempt you from the county library levy. That got through the Assembly. Assembly Bill 543 passed the Assembly, went in the Senate. It was recommended for passage by committee, but did not ended up coming to the floor. And a lot of the activity on this bill happened in about the last 2 weeks, and the session ended before any action could be taken. What happens to that? It is very, in my mind, probably unlikely that any action would happen on that in advance of setting the levies for this coming year. The other thing to consider here is municipal levy limits. Where we talk about raising your municipal levy in order to provide additional funding to exempt your residents from the county library levy. We're all dealing with levy limits ourselves. And, do you have room under your levy limit, or do you want to do that? One of the issues that does come into effect here, and I think it's important to think of, is that if the whole set of options was, let me go back here for a second, if you revert back to a municipal library, currently, if it reverted back to a municipal library, obviously the amount that you're paying in on a per capita basis would disappear. And the important thing that, going forward here, I think it's important to recognize is that under the levy limits, it's our understanding, and this is the letter of what the statute says, that if the joint library were to be dissolved, your levy limit, your maximum levy that you could assess would go down by that amount of money. So it's not this, because it's one of the things that we'd heard bandied about was, was there the potential for going to municipal library and therefore freeing up more money for roads. But to the best of our knowledge, and we've been trying to get a hold of the Department of Revenue to get some confirmation, but I think generally that's the understanding that will not happen.
Before you go any further,
Yes.
I think, Gloria, you have a good handle on that, and that is not the case. She's required to document any services that were transferred into another entity. So that $82,339, you will have to subtract that on your state report. The interesting effect of that is then let us just play out a scenario where the state says, okay, North Hudson, you can raise your levy by 2%. Then the 2% would be based on the 1.4 million minus the 83,000. So the city, on the other hand, their 2% would be greater because they will be getting funds, that transference of funds. Pretty complicated, but that's
Pretty
what we're
complicated.
talking
The other
about
thing
this
is you've
morning.
got the political, realities on the other side is whether they wish to, utilize that capacity too.
Right. I'm just saying what they could
Sure.
do.
Yes,
But it's important that we recognize that that's not an $82,000 windfall.
correct.
Want to make that clear to all you guys. Nope, you don't get it.
So, when we look at here, this is really kind of looks at, what are the impacts of the four options. And, you know, I think, you know, for now, if you focus on the reimbursement at 100% of the cost, you know, some of the same principles hold through at 70% of the cost. But I think if we can just kind of run through this number, you know, the numbers here, you'll understand, you'll have a better understanding as to what the issues are. So the first set up on top here is what happens if we continue, if all the members continue as a joint library. You know, currently your levy is $82,339 per year, you know, and, you know, that's going to change based upon the population. If none of the members are exempt, and if you recall, I said, you know, that could potentially change, but I'm trying to show, you know, what the maximum would be. The members, you know, the Village of North Hudson would, its property owners would be paying an additional $50,000 to the county. This is a county levy, you have to, you know, remember. Now, one of the things in here, when you look at it, just because so much of the valuation in the county is in these 4 communities, remember the $941,000 the county is levying for reimbursement for, you know, called rural circulation. You know, these 4 communities would be paying, you know, $492,000. So you'd be paying a very, you know, really reimbursing other libraries for their circulation is what the essence of is of it. Of that, the other factor to look at here is this number here. It says what's the library going to get? So if you went back to the first slide and added up what the library is getting from the communities, you know, add the $75,000 that they're currently getting from St. Croix County, the library is getting $704,000 to use in operations. You know, part of that's going to go out to the other, you know, some of the other libraries. Looking at the next set, it's, you know, the next set of what ifs is what if everybody contributes enough money to be exempt from the county library levy? You know, if you go back to the formula, the numbers change. You know, if we wanted to go into detail, I think some of the later pages in your handout have the exact detail as to how these numbers came by. What would end up happening is that all of a sudden for the Village of North Hudson, they would be paying in to, as the local levy, $115,000 versus the current $82,000. However, if every community did that, we would have a total of $1,045,000 rounded up going to our library instead of the current $629,000. That's going directly to the library. We'd be paying nothing to the county. And then you look at what's the impact on the, you know, on the library itself. Obviously, you know, the revenues, because that money is going directly there. Their net revenues from tax or from levy amounts is going to go from $700,000 to $1.1 million. Questions on that, on the numbers? So this is, if you went back, this is, you know, these are options 1 with 1A and 1B. If you go down to the kind of option set 2, what happens if the joint library disbands? And the 2 things we'll look at is if the city of Hudson is exempt, and then if the city of Hudson is not exempt. So if the city of Hudson is not exempt, what ends up happening, and I'll focus on, you know, the Village of North Hudson. What would happen is nothing, the city of, or the Village of North Hudson would be paying nothing directly to our library. However, instead of having the $82,000 on the local levy, the county levy would increase by $78,000. So you're, you know, relatively close to a wash. However, under this scenario, what ends up happening is, if you recall, the money that the library gets is based upon circulation. So instantly, the circulation from the residents of North Hudson, the town of Hudson, and the town of St. Joe's gets put into that circulation times cost of circulation formula. So what you can see is that where up here, Under these two options, you're seeing about an extra $75,000 coming from the county. You go down here, and you're at about $390,000 coming from the county. However, under this option, if you look at it, the total revenues to the library, where currently are at $704,000, they drop down to $670,000. The one thing to look at here, though, is that if you recall on one of those first slides, where in 2012 we're paying $50-some thousand out to the other communities for support of their libraries, and the norm on that's probably about $34,000. I mean, in actuality, you should probably add that 34 back in here, because we're not going to be paying that out. So if you add the 34 back here and look where we are now, it really truly hasn't gotten you, it's not helped the library one bit. They're still going to be dealing with the same amount of money. The fourth option that has been discussed is what happens if the city of Hudson, increases its funding to the point where it can be exempt. And what you're doing then is you're changing the funding base for the county library. The city of Hudson would have to come up with another $155,000 for this to happen. But if you look at it, because the city of Hudson is being pulled out of the total tax base for the county library, everybody else's share has increased, so the Village of North Hudson share would increase from $78,000 to $103,000. Under this scenario, the amount going to the library, the increase between option 2A and 2B is really the increase of funds that they get from the city of Hudson. Because what they're getting from the county, again, you sit there and repeat it, it's circulation times cost per circulation. So that's not going to change. And I think if you go over and look at what are the impacts of what happens if there was a change at the county level, where costs were reimbursed at 70%, you can run through the same scenarios here. I think the one thing to note, though, is that currently the Village of North Hudson is supporting the library to the tune of $82,000 a year. If we were back at 70%, where the level was when the Joint Library Board was created, the village would have to fund the library to the tune of $80,000 in order to be exempt. So at that level, the village would be exempt. With that, I mean, if there are any questions, I think this is really, the guts of the matter. And if you understand this, you can have a good discussion about, the issue at hand. If you want, for comparison's sake, on the next sheet that you have in there, if you go down here, this really lines up, what happens to each of the communities under each of the scenarios. So instead of trying to, look at different lines, I've just kind of regrouped these, and for each one of these, you can see what the impact is in terms of tax funding that's going to the library. Behind those, each one of these, they follow in sequence, but you can follow, you can see the calculations if you really need to see, if you want to see the calculations in terms of why some of these numbers are doing what they do. But I think it's probably more important to focus on, the discussion upon the issues in terms of, being willing to make that contribution, or being willing to make any changes, like a major change, like pulling out of the, creating a municipal library and disbanding the joint library. So with that, unless there's anything else you would like me to explore, I'd be welcome any questions.
Well, folks, I've been through this several times now. This is the first time you've seen it. It's taken me a couple of times for this thing to sink in. So anything you're foggy on, ask the man.
How would we know if we were going to be exempt?
There is right now we have the information for let's go back to the calculation real quick. Oop. There we go. Right now, we know what the 2011 numbers from the numbers that will be applied next year for the county we have. And actually the amount I think is about $1,036,000. It has gone up. We have the rest of this information because this was based upon 2010 equalized value. We received the 2011 equalized value last October. So we could probably theorize what the mill rate would be. Probably the only variable right now is going to be what's the equalized value of your community. And the state does not release that information until August 15. If your presumption is it's not going to change, what you'd probably do is take something you're probably looking at a very, very similar rate to this, unless somebody automatically becomes exempt, that you're probably looking at, a similar calculation. I don't think it's gonna, if the amount that is going to be levied by the county is going to go up, I think it's about $830,000, which would be roughly 10% more. So you could sit there and, on a very, very rough basis, say that 115 is going to go up to 126. You're at 82, so you're going to be short $44,000. My quick math is right.
And is that money that we would be owing to this in 2012?
I mean, that's the real decision, because, what we're talking about here with this calculation is, are you exempt from the county library levy or not? And, where that matters is that if you are exempt, let's go back to this slide, these two right here. If you're exempt, you would pay in, let's say, $115,000. So you would have to pay in that additional money to the library. What that does is that's money that the Village of Hudson is going to, or Village of North Hudson is going to levy and send directly to the library. If you don't meet that exemption, what's going to happen is you can stay at the $82,000. However, on your tax bill, the county portion of your tax bill is going to go up, and they're going to levy an additional $54,000 on your residents. And I think one of the keys in here, that I mentioned, that in terms of Act 150, how much reimbursement does our county library or does our local library get? Of that $941,000, we're getting $75,000. So in this scenario, if none of the communities were exempt, the combined total of the communities are paying in $492,000 on the county library levy, and we're getting $75,000 back.
Neil, I have a question. This is the first I've seen of this too, and so you're sort of presented this as if it's options. Are they options? I mean, does this board get to make some choices in the coming months?
Well,
option they want?
I think there have been as George mentioned, there have been some meetings, and I think there are there's always political options. I mean, you could sit there and say, geez, we're going to somehow. There's been talk about, maybe locally a referendum. That's one of the ways you can go above the levy limit. Is it palatable to your residents? And each one of those communities can have a referendum. So some of those people may be exempt, some of those people may not be exempt. So I mean, that's probably option number one. Can you levy more? Can you cut your current services to provide more money to the library to be exempt? Can you go for a referendum? Or at some point in time, can you go back to the 70%? I mean, the other thing legislatively, you may not be able to do anything that would impact this year, but can you, the discussions at the legislature with regard to the bill that did not pass, that initiative did not come from this library. So it means, this same situation is being discussed by other communities. So can there be a greater legislative effort that may not provide relief, for this coming tax year, but may in the future. Does that answer your question, Terry?
The other thing you need to know too is that we do not have to act as a joint, as all four municipalities
Yeah.
together. We don't all have to agree on. It's what this board, this community agrees on. We are independent from the others and they from us. And that's something that I didn't understand initially, and I said, but it can work that way. What concerns me about a referendum, first of all, a referendum costs money to do. Second of all, let's just play out a scenario where the referendum passes this time. We would have to initiate, as I understand it, a referendum the next year to repeat that. Because the referendum, unless it was worded so that it was held in perpetuity, you'd have to bring it up each year. I don't even think you'd be able to do it in perpetuity. So each year you'd have to go before the electorate and say, folks, can we exceed the levy limit by $33,133? And I can pretty much guarantee that that's not going to work. So assuming that it fails, that's the other way we have to look at, is it going to pass? Is it going to fail? So assume that it fails. Okay, then we are relegated to the $82,000 that we're currently paying, and that's the scenario. That's your first one, if I remember, right?
Right.
First box up there, and so that difference, that 54,000 and change, would then be on the county tax.
If we take no action, the county's gonna increase local residents'
That's correct.
property tax by some amount.
By
That's correct.
54,456. So we're not asking tonight for any kind of decisions. You'll see this is on here simply as presentation materials. We will be talking about it probably for the rest of, until we get up to probably into November. Perhaps less, but I know that there are more things that are going on. There's going to be more meetings to determine which is going to be the most advantageous to the taxpayer, and I can't predict that right now.
Yeah, I think the one thing to add, where the village does have, there are, a lot of the actions the village can undertake, on its own. However, the option set number 2, which would be disbanding the library and turning it back into a joint library under the library agreement, that takes unanimous approval of all the communities. So that's one where everybody has to be in lockstep.
Well, yes and no, because one municipality can, according to the contract, can notify the library that they no longer want to be a part of it.
Okay.
1 year's advance notice.
Yeah. So that is a possibility, and in that intervening year, then it would revert back to probably the first one up there.
Right.
Where you'd be looking at the 54, 444, 56. So that's where it's a lot to chew on.
So
The
just,
33,000 represents a 40, and this is not just for the village, it's for all 4 of the municipalities that's in the neighborhood. For the village, it says 40% increase, and we can't be taking that out of our undesignated fund. It's not what that's there for, because this is going to continue on year after year. So, anything you'd like to add, Darrell?
Not at this point.
Guys, okay? I just want to add that when I asked Neil if he would come and present to you folks tonight, he indicated to me, I'm okay with it, but you better check with the mayor first, which I did, and I really appreciate, and I've said this to Alan too, I appreciate him not freeing you up, but saying, yeah, sure, go ahead. What I think is valuable when Neil goes to the various municipalities and presents this, we are all getting the same set of numbers. And I can tell you that Neil has put in an incredible amount of time, taken away from his regular city duties, to generate this document. And the only thing I'd ask you, if down there, as you're still going through this, if you find some significant changes, just let us know. If you think it will impact our decision,
Sure.
one way or
I
the
mean,
other.
you know, one of the things that we have talked about that I don't think we're ready to put together exactly yet is try to come up with a comprehensive, you know, projection that everybody can agree with what, you know, what we're gonna be facing this fall. You know, this is, you know, it's, you know, if I entitled it, kind of a recast of 2012, but, you know, we do have some of the numbers for 2013, and I think if you made some assumptions about equalized value, even if they stayed constant, you may have a better picture as to what we're looking at in terms of dollars, you know, but, you know, off-the-cuff remark is you're probably looking at 10% more.
10% more than the additional 33,000?
Yes. You know, it's, if we just looked at this number here, where I believe the county's number is like 900 or 1,030,000, so I just, you know, add 90 to that, and I'm at roughly 10% more. So this 54 would go up 10%, or wait a minute, which one am I at? Oh. Hang on. Oh, hang on, I gotta go back to, here we go. If that went up to $1,036,000, which is going up $90,000 or roughly 10%, the $115,000 would go up to about 126, you know, which is roughly a 10% increase. You're at 82 there, so that's where instead of 33,000 short, we'd be at, you know, 44,000 short. And I think, and, you know, if when we do this recast for 2013, you know, that would be my kind of off-the-cuff estimate where it's going to end up. You know, because I don't anticipate any, you know, quantum change in equalized value just based upon how much the equalized value in communities have been reduced over the past couple of years.
In a document that Barb Peterson sent to several of us, private funding, I think this is important for the board to know and for everybody to know, private funding is irrelevant. This has, under the statute, whether the library has a zero balance private endowment or a $10 million private endowment at its disposal, none of that affects the municipality's obligation to provide financial support from tax dollars in an amount at least equal to what the municipality's property owners would otherwise need to pay the county. As I understand what that means is, well, the word irrelevant was the key number there, and that any gifts given to the library are in addition to what the amount is that is being taxed. Is that correct?
That would be my understanding, because in terms of this computation, it's how much levy support the community has, where those donations would be directly to the library. If somebody happened to say, we're going to give the Village North Hudson $50,000 a year and you turn it over to the library, the tune may be different.
Yes.
But if it's a direct
If
gift
there's
to
a
the library, it
philanthropist out
does
there
not
in
count in this
North
formula.
Hudson who wants to contribute $33,122, we'll be glad to apply it to the library. Anybody else? Thank you very much, Neil.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I appreciate your time and thoroughness with this packet of information.
Mr. President, I had some information that the board should be aware of that bears on this.
All right.
Thank you.
Use the podium, please. This may be
You made reference to the meeting of February 28th, and as you'll recall from that meeting, it started with an explanation of the financial status of the library. And it was pointed out there that the library is in a precarious financial position in that it is running at a deficit last year and this year, and it is burning through its reserve. And so it needs to, out of all this process, obtain a significant increase in funding next year just to maintain its services. Now, the services rank quite low versus the state standards on comparable libraries, but I won't get into that now. The pertinent point is that if we hope out of all this process that the library will wind up with significant additional net funding to provide services for all the community. If it doesn't, the library is going to face some significant cuts next year in hours, services, and programs, which are just basic at this level now. So as you ponder this, and there are a lot of difficult questions here, we certainly recognize that. Please bear in mind that one of the goals needs to be to get additional money to the library to maintain the services that the public needs to have. And if anybody has a question on that, I'll be trying to address it, but if not, I just wanted to leave you with the thought that the library does need additional funding just to keep going in the years ahead, and that needs to be a key element of how all this is decided.
Thank you, Jim. Would you please identify yourself for the record?
Jim O'Connor, thank you.
And your address, please?
1212 Riverside.
Thank you. All right, anybody else from the board have any comments? Thank you very much. Folks are welcome to stay. We've got some other items on the agenda, as you can see. The next item 6 is amended Class B liquor license for extended premise, Malibu Inn Spring Motorcycle Run.
Move, where's that at? I'd like to read the whole motion.
Yeah. Oh, no, please, don't read the whole
Okay.
motion. The essence of the motion, no.
I'll move to approve the, read three, okay. Move that the Class B/Class B retail license for the sale of fermented malt beverages and intoxicating liquors for Malibu Inn be temporarily amended for an event taking place April 14th, 2012, which is with the conditions listed, commonly referred to as a motorcycle run.
Very good. Thank you, Mark. Do we hear a second?
Second.
Nice
Cleaned it up.
Nice
I
try.
didn't know if he'd catch it, you know?
Yeah, thanks a lot.
I'll second it.
I trust you guys are gonna show up just to check things out and make sure.
Might have to.
Yeah, you might show up on a bike.
Community
Jim?
support.
Jim, there, a little community support.
Do you have a Harley I can borrow?
I have a Yamaha you can borrow.
That'd be all right.
I'd stop over. Any comments or questions regarding this event? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
I,
Same sign.
I wrote tonight, yeah?
All right. Oh, it's time for me to, I got a few things here. You notice item number 1 on here, the centennial celebration is June 10th. A lot of activity going on. One of them, I'll hit right off the top, because you guys have been having a little fun teasing me earlier this evening. The quilters are going full bore with designing, or with building a quilt, a commemorative quilt, that it's going to be pretty good size. The last I heard was going to be about 5 by 6. And so the question had been offered, well, are we going to auction it off? That'd be a nice fundraiser. But I said, I don't think that's appropriate. I think it's something that should stay here in the village in perpetuity. And the idea I had in mind for where we do it is right behind this desk, so that when the camera's on us, instead of seeing that yellow wall, this might be a nice piece of decoration. We also have a plethora of ideas about what we should do. Well, I need to apologize just a little bit. I can't carry all the bricks. So you folks can expect to get a call from me in the not too distant future, looking for somebody to help carry the load. And so we can spread this out, and I think we'll have a nice affair. The next item that you see on that list there is the St. Croix River Crossing update. And Mr. Stanifer has something that he said he would share with us regarding that. A very interesting update.
Oh, the email from MnDOT?
Yeah.
Just so that you know that this project is in fact moving moving forward, I've got an announcement here that bids are now ready to be sought for the bridge, and an announcement that MnDOT is holding a meeting on the project for potential bidders on Tuesday, 3 April from 8:30 to 11 at the MnDOT Bridge office in Oakdale. So the project is aggressively moving forward by MnDOT, and there's the announcement of the first bid meeting.
That's great. I love to hear that kind of progress. Thank you, Darrell. Next item I have on my list, yep. I'm guessing that everybody got this card in the mail recently, right? Everybody get this old card from Veolia? And it has to do with yard waste service, and it says on the back, is now available. And so we checked with Veolia, and the yard waste pickup will begin, the first pickup will be April 6th, which is a week from this Friday. So I don't know about you, but my can's already full, and I can't wait to get it emptied so I can fill it up again. Just wanted to make sure, those of you who have already contracted with Veolia, April 6th, key date, get your can out. I gotta tell you, I think this is the best deal ever. $25.80 for 12 months. Cost you $2.15 a month. It's pretty good. Next item, St. Croix Emergency Management Hazard Mitigation Planning Session. I know that sounds like a lot, but what I just wanted to share with you is I participated in that meeting last Friday along with Gloria and Becky. Chief was there, and Kristen Slater and Chris Strait, regarding hazardous mitigation. This is something that, it's a survey, it's a questionnaire that we have to jointly fill out every 5 years. And just wanted to let you know we did that, we did our obligation. And the idea is if there was a catastrophe in the area, how would we deal with it? And potential catastrophes, right? And we try to avert them. Anything you want to add to that? No. Okay. Chief, you want to say anything to that? Okay, good. Finally, sharing the front page with the library report in the last Hudson Star Observer. You may recall there was a picture of this handsome young man on the left side, and that young fellow is Eric Christensen, and I'm on the EMS Commission. And we learned shortly before the meeting that Eric is taking another job over on the east side of the state. Yeah, the east side of the state. And the commission has met with Devin Willey and has modified the job description. I have a copy of it if anybody's interested. And the search will begin as soon as the finishing touches are done. So we'll be looking for a new EMS chief. And that's all I've got regarding that. Turn it over to Gloria for, you got anything?
Just quickly that on April 4th, the auditors will be here. So the day after the election, so it's always a lot of fun.
The election? The election? Becky, did you have anything you wanted to say as a clerk?
Sure. Well, I will just remind everybody that there is an election on April 3rd. Were you finished?
I was.
Okay.
Oh, you.
Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on April 3rd, and absentee voting is available here at the clerk's office until this Friday at 5 p.m. The other thing I wanted to mention is that because of the election, after the election, we will be having a reorganization meeting, and typically that is the second Tuesday after the election, so that will be taking place on April 17th at 5 p.m. It's noted on your agenda, but if you could all put that on your calendar, we will ask the board to be in attendance on April 17th, 5 o'clock. Another opportunity for the board is the Bakke Norman Law Seminar that's taking place on April 5th. And anybody who is interested in attending, please let me know, and I will be sending those RSVPs in to Bakke Norman tomorrow morning.
Becky, you can include me in that.
Okay.
You should have gotten an email regarding, or an invitation in the email. And I will tell you, I've been to these, several of these, and they are definitely worth your time. Definitely.
Do they have
Thanks,
refreshments?
Rich.
Yes, they
Yes.
do.
Yes, they do. They're excellent. Beverages,
Normally,
cookies. Go ahead.
yeah, in the past, we've always held it at WITC, but they're having a big remodeling project there, and their conference center area is closed, so we're gonna hold it at Ready Randy's this year, which is just about a half mile south of New Richmond. You know where it is, yeah, so,
Ready?
right near New Richmond. It's a place called Ready Randy's, and they have a large conference center. It's a bar and grill kind of place. It's on G and what, 65?
Yeah.
Yep, corner of G and 65.
Across from, the contractors.
Derek, yep. Near Derek's
R-E-A-D-Y?
offices. Pardon me?
You can't
R-E-A-D-Y?
pass, go to G, pass it.
Ready, yeah, Ready, R-E-A-D-Y,
Okay.
Randy's, yep.
Ready Randy's, all right. Okay.
Again, registration is at 5:30 and the seminar starts at 6 p.m.
Are ties required?
No,
Yeah,
only for the presenters.
it's formal,
Tom will be
formal
wearing.
dress.
Tom will be dressed in a suit. He'll look like a lawyer.
Tom Schumacher will look like a lawyer.
He will. All right. Anything else?
That's
Peggy,
all I have,
anything
thank
else,
you.
Gloria?
Thank you.
Oh, okay. I noticed that there's no paper between the Plan Commission and the Finance, which indicate plan didn't meet. Correct?
You're correct.
Which moves us right into the Personnel and Finance Committee meeting, which occurred between 6 and 6:30. Somewhere in there. All right.
George, can I move to approve the March 2012 non-reoccurring claims totaling $8,141.48?
Sure.
Second.
Yeah. Any questions regarding the bills? Well, before we vote on that, Gloria, you want to tell them about that other sheet of paper that you handed out?
On the table, you would have found a report that has all of the check numbers written from March 1st through through the 31st so far anyway. And it'll be a new report that will be included in your board packets going forward. But what it allows you to do is to make sure that there's no missing check numbers, that there's no $10,000 checks to myself, that type of check, just to give you a little bit more.
What's the Board of Commissioners, that's $74,000?
That's the loan that we refinanced. That's a combined loan that was, yep.
Why is it called that?
It's a state program, and the interest rate was like 3.25 maybe.
No, I'm not
And-
questioning it, I just didn't, it says
Well,
Board
I
of
was
Commissioners, and
Gonna let you know that one of the
I didn't
nice,
receive any of that, I just let you know why not.
one of the nice things about that loan program is that, all of the interest that is collected from our loan goes to the high school libraries, or the school libraries, I should say. So it's a way of supporting the school libraries, which is kind of ironic, but
It's a state program rather than a regular bank.
bank, correct, yep.
That's like that funny name.
Sorry that I asked
Are you getting too much information?
more, and all I needed to know
Well,
was.
then why don't we do a roll call vote and start with Mr. Ortner?
Yes.
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 Yes. The next item on here is the group voluntary benefits. And as we did with finance, Gloria, I just want to talk about it a little bit, and then we'll ask for a motion.
Certainly. The village health insurance plan covers one vision test per year, but it does not cover eyeglasses or contact lenses. By offering this employee-funded vision insurance through payroll deductions, the employees would have access to insurance coverage for for eyeglasses and contact lenses, and one vision test per year, additional besides the health insurance. Additionally, the village does not offer any form of short-term disability coverage that would protect employees from their income due to illness or injury. This would also be an employee-funded group insurance through payroll deductions.
George, I'll move to authorize the village administrator to research and make available vision and short-term disability insurance options through payroll deductions at employee expense.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. The next one,
We really don't have, because it didn't make it through finance.
okay,
There was no recommendation.
there was no recommendation from finance, so we will not talk about resolution 2012-02.
I'm sure we will sometime.
Okay, and finally, allocation of unassigned funds to reserve accounts. You have a very, I'm not gonna ask Gloria to read that whole page to you. A lot of detail there. You want it, can you give us a quick synopsis?
In interest of being financially prudent, the village has been setting monies aside for future purchases and obligations. And what this would do is reserve funds and increase some that are already being reserved for future purchases like replacement of trucks, squad cars, designate grants and donations that was given to the police department, and it would set that money aside so that it would not be spent for other items.
George, should I move the authorized motion?
Sure.
I'd like to move to authorize the village administrator to transfer $2,500 from the unassigned fund to the Public Works truck assigned account and $10,000 into the employee retirement committed account. Additionally, set up assigned accounts for and transfer $8,500 to a police department squad account and $9,827 to a police community education account from the unassigned account.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay. We'll do a roll call. This time we'll start with Jim.
Yes.
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 Mr. Stanifer, we're up to Public Works, and I see you have one item of to bring forth after you give just a chair update.
Just quickly in the chair update, we also will be installing on the two entrances to the village, the north entrance and the south entrance on Highway 35, a burning permit sign that indicates that burning permits are required, and it's a sign that hinges so that when there is a burning ban in effect for the Hudson area declared by the fire chief, that sign then will drop down and it will indicate that a burning ban is in effect. So it's all one sign, but it's very nice in terms of its application and usage. It's hinged, and it will be an educational awareness to village residents when a burning ban is in effect. So that will be going up.
I think I saw a picture of one. Did you want to wave it around?
Yeah, for those that want to see it,
It's a requirement.
Look at that.
burning ban.
I think it's beautiful.
Very nice.
If there's a burning ban and it's for all four communities that the city of Hudson serves, does each community set the burning ban? Can one municipality say, no, I don't want a burning ban, and the other
No,
one?
it's set by the fire chief. Yep.
I just asked because about 2 weeks ago, the town of Hudson had a burning ban on, and no one else did. So I was confused.
They forgot to take their sign down.
Yeah.
I heard from somebody.
And it's kind of
Oh,
an
was it?
unprecedented situation, but that is the case.
Okay, let me
I
follow
think,
up on that.
actually, to answer your question, a local municipality could, if it had a sufficient reason to protect the safety and welfare of its local public, it could institute its own burning ban if it wanted to.
Okay.
Could go over and above the minimum requirement. That would make sense.
And these signs will be placed,
North?
Jim's yard.
South.
Do we need state, this may seem silly, but do we need state approval to put those signs up?
Either our public works director or our village engineer indicated that we did. I don't know, but I
We've been
guess
checking with
if we do, they can
Montana
figure that
on
out.
a lot of these requirements.
They don't have many.
Yeah, we ain't be able to put it up, I think.
We've put signs up before and had the state tell us to take them down.
No, but we keep putting them back up.
Yes, we do.
All right, and then there's a financial issue to deal with tonight, isn't there?
Public Works did approve the contract and recommend to the full village board an extension of the contract for street sweeping that we have with Mike McPhillips. So, Mr. President, I move to approve the contract for street sweeping services with Mike McPhillips, Inc., effective 1 April through 31 March 2013, at a rate of $86 per hour.
Second.
Any question, any discussion?
Do we pay any hazardous waste for our street sweepings as far as removal, or is that all included in the $86 an hour?
That's all included.
as far as, dumping the sand and the remains, it gets taken down to the shop yard and then, Veolia charges us to remove that.
Thank you.
This is a spending item, so Dan, you want to start us off?
Yes.
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 Public safety, anything?
We did not meet, so we have nothing to report.
Okay.
Nothing from public welfare as well, George.
Oh,
And nothing from park.
but I see Park, you've got, I've got some questions as a Park board. Park
Oh,
board.
boy.
No, this is great stuff. You gotta remember, I'm trying to get this centennial thing going. So as I looked at the horseshoe pits, the crushed rock for bocce ball, I see a beanbag thing here. I'm going, I wonder, Park Board, Commissioner, is there any way we could have temporary bocce ball court or the temporary beanbag boxes for our centennial on June 10th?
That is quite possible.
Well, next time you guys get together, would you be so kind as to talk about that as a possibility and just something for the children to do? And I'm sure that, I mean, bocce ball, they've been playing bocce ball for over 100 years. And, I mean, you can't even say bocce without an Italian accent. So we ought to do that, right? Bocce. It's my home. My brother's back home. All right. The only other thing before I adjourn, just draw your attention to what's beyond the last folder, or the last tab here, is the arrest warrant report. Remember, this was instituted and approved by this board back in October of 2007, and there's some really good statistical data showing you folks that this really works. If you have any questions about this, Mark, you could talk to that if they had any questions, right? Or would that be something to bounce off Denise?
Topic was this.
The North Hudson Municipal Court Arrest Warrant Report. It's pretty straightforward, but
Denise would be a better.
Denise is
yeah,
probably the best
better
one
contact for that.
to answer questions on it. She does all the data collection, so. Does anybody else have anything before we adjourn? Mr. Zapp, is there anything you'd like to say?
I'd like to move to adjourn, George.
Let it be written, let it be
Thank
done.
you.
And let the record show we adjourned at 8:20.